LIV Golf is about to make the next big step in its bid to go mainstream, as it nears an agreement with the US TV network Fox Sports to buy airtime for its tournaments. But the new FCC regulations could still throw a spanner in the works and derail Greg Norman's ambitions. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Saudi League's broadcasting intentions and more, so keep watching. First off, LIV Golf is finally going to start broadcasting on TV. Even though LIV Golf's been around as an entity for a while now, it still hasn't made its way into the real mainstream market. We mean, sure, the headlines and all the media attention are great, but so far, your run-of-the-mill golfing fan still doesn't care much for the league shenanigans. Of course, there are a bunch of factors that contribute to that, like the unfamiliar format and the team game. At the same time, though, the fact that it's not reaching millions of viewers who still rely on cable TV for sports is definitely hampering its progress. That said, Greg Norman's apparently about to put all those troubles behind him as he nears a deal with Fox Sports to finally bring his upstart league to people's homes. Now, it is a bit surprising to see that a mere TV deal has taken this long to materialize for the Australian circuit. Like, surely this would have been one of the first things they would have looked at, right? Well, guess not, because during LIV's early days, everyone did seem pretty happy with the whole YouTube thing. Besides, it's not like they've actually kicked into top gear yet, as the whole invitational thing isn't their master plan anyway. Still, they've poured over $1 billion into bringing some of the top golfing talents into their ranks, without even having a way to broadcast their efforts. And it's truly remarkable how they've managed to remain relevant among every single sporting outlet this way. Then again, maybe streaming your events for free on the internet can attract greater audiences. Up next, LIV's broadcasting deal will be different from the PGA. Alright, so here's where things get a bit interesting. You see, usually, whenever there's a broadcasting agreement between a major sports organization and a TV network, it's skewed in the sport's favor. For instance, the PGA Tour sells its rights to media companies in exchange for a substantial upfront fee, and this not only injects a ton of cash into the game itself, but also incentivizes the network to advertise and recoup its costs in different ways. LIV Golf, though, seems to be heading down an entirely different path, where it's set to pay for its own airtime and then earn money by selling its own commercial sponsorships. Plus, apparently, the league will be responsible for the production of its own broadcasts, on top of selling its own advertisements. So, in essence, Greg Norman's trying to keep his cards close to his chest and doesn't want to share that extra revenue with anyone else. Besides, these deals usually last for a very long time, meaning that the Saudi League could end up looking like a completely different beast by the time we reach its conclusion. And perhaps that's what Norman's anticipating here as well, since he wouldn't really be getting the returns based on that future potential by going down the traditional route. Also, we've got to remember that the league as an entity doesn't have a lot of leverage right now, as it struggles to find its place among the golfing hierarchy. As a matter of fact, even this Fox deal doesn't look done and dusted, because the Australians still gotta navigate through another major hurdle. What's more, FCC regulations could derail LIV's broadcasting bid. Now, even if Norman manages to find some middle ground with Fox Sports and sign the deal, he's still gonna have to comply with US Federal Communications Commission requirements. And if you've been paying attention, they made some pretty huge changes to their criteria back in March. So, what's the caveat here? We mean everyone else, including the PGA Tour, seems to be complying with everything just fine, right? How could LIV be treated any differently? Well, buckle up, because this looks like a bullet that's got the Saudi League's name on it. Basically, these new regulations mandate broadcasters to disclose whenever foreign governments or their representatives lease time on their airwaves. And considering how the entire backbone of the upstart circus funding is the Saudi government's investment fund, you see how this would be a problem, right? Exactly. Which means that not only could the FCC scrutinize the company's cash flows and how it's operating on American turf, but if it finds something seriously egregious, then it could literally shut the deal down. Interestingly enough, a LIV Golf representative refused to comment when asked about the potential implications of these regulations. Of course, the chances of something that radical are pretty low, because at the end of the day, Norman knows what he's doing, and his team's probably put months of work into this whole thing. Still, you've got to wonder whether these new rules were introduced in March just to specifically stop someone like the Aussie from dominating the US market. Not to mention, Norman has contacted multiple broadcasters. Even though the Fox Sports deal looks done and dusted, it's still better to take it with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, nothing's set in stone just yet. We mean, not only has LIV Golf Golf refused to comment on the possibility, but there have also been rumblings about Norman snooping in other places to find something better. Oh, and the league spokesperson even mentioned during an interview that they're in active discussions with several companies about broadcasting their events. Also, just in case you were wondering whether they're behind on schedule or anything, then no, they're not. In fact, an official statement says they're actually ahead on numerous fronts, including the broadcasting deal. On top of that, the Saudi Circuit's CEO has also mentioned a bunch of times that he's been weighing different options and that there's a ton of interest from across the board. According to an industry executive, though, the upstart circuit was actually turned down by some of the biggest names in broadcasting, including NBC, Disney, Apple, and Amazon. And the only reason why Fox Sports is involved in the first place is that their CEO, Lachlan Murdoch, asked them to do so. Now, it's a bit weird to see so much hesitation among media companies, especially with an entity the size of LIV. At the same time, you can't blame them either, since Norman's organization comes with a lot of baggage, which isn't just limited to the whole Saudi sports washing thing. So, perhaps they don't want to attach their names to an entity that's already riddled with controversy. Coming up, LIV is not the first one to come up with this deal, with Greg Norman seeking such a massive departure from your usual run-of-the-mill TV deal. You'd think that this is an incredibly rare case, right? And to be fair, you'd be correct in thinking that, because even if you go back a decade, it's hard to find a sporting organization that doesn't just sell off its rights to a broadcasting company. That said, there's still a precedent in the sporting world for it. In 2015, the Premier Boxing Champion Series did something pretty similar. Back then, the series was backed by over $400 million in institutional capital, which isn't very different from the Saudi League, and it also had an influential spearhead at the top in Al Heyman. Oh, and as far as the specifics are concerned, they paid around $20 million to buy airtime for 20 shows on NBC and NBC Sports Network, which doesn't really sound like much. Not everything was the same as this Fox Sports deal though, because apparently the PBC deal also included co-investment from the NBC family in the form of shared production costs, on-air talent, and promo assets. So in a weird way, the Australians are really thrusting us into a new era, not only for golf, but for sports in general. And it's gonna be super fascinating to see how this whole thing pans out without any real input from the network itself. And finally, LIV Golf needs to wrap this deal up. LIV Golf representatives have been saying time and time again that they're ahead of schedule in terms of securing this broadcasting deal. But the fact of the matter is that they've been losing out on precious revenue and advertisement without it. We mean, sure, streaming for free on YouTube and Facebook is fine, and has probably attracted audiences from around the world. At the same time though, their viewership numbers haven't exactly been skyrocketing either. In fact, if you actually head over to one of the invitationals, you could probably get in without even having to buy a full-price ticket. On top of that, the interest seems to be dwindling with each new event, which is definitely a cause for concern. Now, we could sit here and theorize all we want, but perhaps the most plausible explanation for the dip is that the core golfing audience just isn't tuning into these events. And no matter how much you try to appeal to the casual fans, they're not gonna stick around for very long. So the clock's ticking, and Greg Norman needs to wrap this Fox Sports deal up before his upstart league starts to run out of steam. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think that a TV deal would revive mainstream interest in LIV Golf? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.